So you saw the thumbnail and I know what you're thinking. Another Mercedes exhaust build, really? It's true, we've been on a bit of a Mercedes streak lately and hey, that's just how it goes sometimes. The shop's been filled with all kinds of cool cars lately, but a lot of high performance Benzes have rolled in and what can we say? We're good at what we do and the word gets around. But today, we're bringing you something a little bit different, even if it's still a Mercedes. This time, we've got the W211 E55 AMG, and under the hood is the legendary, naturally aspirated M156 V8. Now, if you remember, the last one of these monsters we featured was Alex from Legit Street Cars C63 way back when. But for this build, we're switching up the format more to show you the how behind the magic that we do here. Normally, we jump right into what's wrong, then figure out a way to fix it, and call it a day. But today, we're going deeper. You're going to want to see the whole build process, the craftsmanship, and the little details that make a custom exhaust, well, custom. You get a better idea of the complexity behind the choices we make, why this isn't just another exhaust. It's something we tailor for an unmistakable sound and performance. If you've ever wondered what goes into making a car sound like an absolute animal, this is the video for you. So, let's dive into it. Remember when I told you guys in the Don't Delete Your Muffler video about all those Mercedes owners rolling in here with their half-baked budget exhaust jobs? Well, this build is another classic example of that stereotype in action. The owner finally had enough of being disappointed with what was on the car, mainly because it was quite literally falling apart. I'll let Cody break that down in a second. Now, as much as we love going all out with headers and race pipes, this customer wasn't quite ready to take the plunge yet. So for now, we decided the best move was to leave the stock cats in place and work around them. It's all about baby steps sometimes.
So here we have the old exhaust. This is the area where I just cut it off. As you can see, it's quite rusty. The customer came in because he had a loud exhaust leak, and you can see there's a couple leaks in this X pipe. It's just broken there and here. It's just dumping exhaust fumes out. This was obviously mild steel and welded onto a stainless steel section from the factory mufflers. So ideally that's not what we want to do, and obviously this didn't last very long. So we're gonna basically just cut this out of here, get rid of the mufflers, and build a whole stainless steel exhaust system after the cats.
They wanted that perfect balance, a sound that's powerful and aggressive, but still keeps that signature Mercedes class. You know, something that turns heads without turning it into a race car wannabe. For us at this point, this kind of request is basically second nature, especially when it comes to Mercedes V8s. We've done it so many times that we didn't even need to overthink it. Once we knew the direction, we jumped in and got to work.
So we have another Mercedes in the shop that's going to be pretty much very similar to the one that we just did. The other Mercedes had aftermarket downpipes where this customer wanted to keep his cats. So the only difference is I have to swedge this up to 3-inch, and then the rest of the exhaust is going to be a 3-inch exhaust. From this point, I had to cut off the exhaust and bring out the downpipe section, swedge this up to 3-inch, and I'm going to build it after this section.
So you guys already know the formula. Straight sections, X pipe, and of course our megaphones. Now we know these would fit because we've been here and done this before, and quite frankly fit more with less space. So even though these things are quite hefty, we got them in there pretty good. But placement is a little bit of a tricky thing, and having a straight section before the megaphone always helps bring out the sound. Now, a lot of people don't know that having good fit and finish is mostly about how well you prep the pipes before you actually lay those beads. These pipes have to be clean and fitted up every single time in order to get a good-looking, strong weld that'll hold up to the exhaust heat, expansion and contraction, and the soot that could contaminate the weld. We went with 3-inch. Of course, I've got my rule of thumb, an inch per 100 horsepower, duals 3-inch. This thing will support perfectly the power and support the sound that we're trying to get out of this thing without getting too droney or too loud and raspy. So with the center section out of the way, we had to figure out our first big hurdle, which was what we were going to do in the rear. Now, of course, we like our stuff looking pretty and being all symmetrical, but sometimes the car doesn't actually allow us to do that. And the W211 chassis is one of those cars. This cutout here for the trunk space, you can see is shaped differently, side dependent. And that's because it has the battery tray located on one side with this, the place where the spare tire would be in the middle. But if you look here, there's a cutout here that Mercedes does take advantage of the stock system to run the exhaust up and in there. Now, like I said, we do want to try to get it symmetrical, but this is a modified vehicle, so we can kind of half the difference between being as symmetrical as possible and then being able to show off a little bit more of the exhaust via the back end. Because when you look inside of a modified vehicle, it doesn't hurt to have shiny mufflers, shiny pipes. So bringing these down is less of an eyesore, especially if you got something real technical looking like a nice V-band clamp. So a lot of people don't realize that every weld has to be fitted up before we actually can stick them together. So any bend or piece that you see represents a lot of time and thought and fitment before we can even tack it together. So a lot of times we'll use tape to help us get the best placement, which was necessary to figure out how to get these mufflers up into the place we want, which then have to go out to some tips that are going to require a lot of measuring and thinking. The other thing you might not realize about exhaust fabrication is how many times the system has to come up and down during our build process. Every system probably comes up and down at least 15, maybe 20 times while we're doing the fitment. I mean, it's basically a workout in itself. Cody having to make this trip back and forth, putting it on the table, making sure everything's laid out, that nothing warped, nothing changed, nothing is different than how it started, and then getting everything set up with his back purging, and then getting to work on the single change that he wanted to make. It really does take quite a bit of time, but when you've been doing this as often as we have, we basically have a system figured out where it's second nature for us. So the thing we can't get around though is the in and out, up and down. That just goes with the job. It's much different than just bending some pipes out of mild steel or cutting things out. If you want these systems looking nice, it really does take a lot of time and patience to get it right. There'll have to be a little bit of a different jog that we have to do to get up and inside of here because of this cutout, and then up and inside of here. And I'll show you what the factory does, which is down here. Now I've got the two pipes laying over each other, and at first glance it might be hard to tell the difference between these two pipes. But if you take a look past the two hangers of each section, you'll notice that this one has just one bend right here, and while this side has two bends in the same pipe. Now that's how the factory overcomes that issue. We not only have to use the same amount of space, but also fit 3-inch. So what we're going to be doing is just a little bit different in order to get the system up and into place. And Cody's fitting it up here, as you can see, trying to get that resonator. Again, the big challenge with AMG cars is getting their tips located back. So not only do we have to fit the resonators, but then we have to cut back over to the tips we want to run. But we've been here, done it before. It just takes a little bit more work. Now with the mufflers, we typically would have gone with two vibrant ultra quiets. However, being that this car had the cats in place, we didn't want it too muted. So we figured one would do the job of controlling the drone while keeping this thing with enough bark that you know it's there. The tips really did present a challenge because of the jog that they had to take when they exited the muffler to the placement on the bumper. It was quite extreme, and we wanted something that really kind of filled up the void that was there. So a lot of time and effort and thought went into the placement and how we were going to get two dual 3-inch rolled angled tips to fit up in there. And Cody came up with something nice that really complemented the handsome looks and classic styling of the W211 Mercedes-Benz. Exhaust tips really are quite tricky. In fact, a lot of times people will come in and ask us they want to do quad tips or dual tips, and they are blown away by the price quotes that we give them, not realizing that because of expansion and contraction, it's a very difficult thing to get right. They have to stay away from the bumper, but have enough room that they can expand out, not stick too far out, not stick too far in, and not burn the bumper at the same time. It's really taken quite a lot of practice and patience on our behalf to get these things where we know that they're not going to cause any problems, as well as not impede flow or cause any issues. You can get all that right, but does it really matter if it doesn't sound right? All right, so that's the build. A bit of a departure from our usual style, but I think it's really good to show you guys what goes into these projects. Not just the end result, but all the little steps along the way. So what do you think? Do you like the more in detailed step-by-step breakdown, or do you prefer when we just hit you with the problem and then the fix? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And I gotta ask, do you think if we would have gone with headers or downpipes, would it have sounded different or just louder? We love to hear your takes on this stuff. But as always, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell so you can catch the next build, whether it's another Mercedes or something completely out of left field. You never know what'll come through these doors. Stay loud, stay curious, and hopefully you catch you on the next time.